Having books in the house really helped because it seemed like something to be, hopefully this doesn't sound egomaniacal, but to be celebrated, like something that people put on the shelf in their home and that it's important to one or more members of a family. And I don't know, I just like the idea of being, I liked the idea that I could write something and strangers would put it in their house and like share it with other people. And so I think from a very young age, that became a goal too. It wasn't just, I want to tell stories, it was, I want to share stories. And of course that makes me a particular kind of person, I'm sure, because only certain kinds of people need attention for their artwork, and I'm one of them. But I don't know, it seemed to be something that I kind of took to. I loved doing it, and then teachers told me I was good at it, and so of course, as a kid who was really bad at sports, could barely sign my name with a pencil, and just really, never any natural musical talent or anything, to be told I was good at something, really meant a lot to me, especially as a shy little kid, and so I kind of just clung to it and kept going with it.
Okay, that makes sense. And then also, we've kind of talked about it, but you've won some pretty notable awards for both of your novels that are out. What does that mean to you? Does that affect your writing at all?
Yeah, it's crazy because winning the awards was the best thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, it of course is why I have a career that I can actually sustain as just an author, and I have been able to for about almost 5 years now. And so the awards are a give and take. It's a lot of fun. It's great to have your name out there and to get more and more readers with every acknowledgement or accolade, but it also mounts a lot of pressure for everything else that you're working on. I thought my second book was going to be my hardest book to write after my first book won a couple of awards. Then I wrote my other book, my third book that's going to come out next May. I wrote it after Noggin had been nominated for the National Book Award, and I think the pressure of two books that had been well received was actually I felt it much greater than the pressure of just the one. And so now I sort of have this hidden fear that in May that the mask is gonna come off and everyone's gonna see that I've been fooling them for 2 books now. But that's also just the nature of being an author. We're like this. And it creates a lot of pressure, but at the same time, more than anything, what those awards do, especially ones from the American Library Association, which where things come back got acknowledged for, that gets my book to so thousands upon thousands of more readers. And so at the end of the day, all the pressure and cons aside, they're life-changing. And so I knock on wood every day about those awards, because I honestly think that I might have to, without the awards for my first book, I would probably have to be writing on the side still, and maybe working another job or something like that. So it's able to keep me doing the only thing that I really want to do, which is just writing books.
Cool, well thank you.
Thanks so much. You guys are so prepared.
Hi, I'm Brenna. I'm a secondary education major, and in your bio it says you used to write about aliens and underwater creatures. Why the switch to young adults, especially with your teaching experience with young adults?
Yeah, it's funny. I just always thought I was going to end up. First, when I was a kid, I wrote sci-fi and stuff, and it was fun, but I think I always had a hard time finishing it or taking it seriously. And then when I went to college, I started writing really what I thought was going to be really high literary, adult drama books, about people with relationship problems and things like that in New York. And I wanted it to be, I was trying to write books that looked like all the bestsellers, on the literary fiction list and things like that. So eventually when I grew out of that and realized that I did have stories to tell, and they weren't anyone else's stories, and they weren't going to be stories that form fit into any other kind of style or anything. So I wrote Where Things Come Back, and then I didn't know it was young adult. I didn't know. It was 2006, and so YA, young adult, that term hadn't really taken on the broad meaning that it has now. Not a lot of people knew what it was. I certainly didn't, and I was teaching at the time. It was just it's something that we said in reference to very, I don't know, like you would have said in the library or something, but you wouldn't have like talked about like, oh, is anyone reading a good YA book or something like that? Like now you do. And so I just kind of, I don't know, it was kind of strange because my agent actually told me that I wrote a YA book. He said, so you know you wrote a young adult book. I was like, sure. I don't know. That's about teenagers. And so what I always try to do is, I always try to just keep in mind that I have this friend Andrew Smith. Has anyone ever heard of Andrew Smith? He's an author. He wrote Grasshopper Jungle and Linger. Okay, really great author. Crazy, crazy cool guy. And crazy cool, like no one talks like that. Anyway, sorry. I said crazy cool guy. But anyway, he said one time in front of an audience, I was at an event of his or something, and he said, someone said, why do you write about teenagers? Or why do you write for teenagers? And he said, I don't write for teenagers, I write about teenagers. And whoever wants to read about them can read about them. And so that's how I think that I try to keep my relationship with what I'm writing, with like YA. And why I think naturally I came to it just because I had a story to tell. And the story was about someone growing up in a small southern town and feeling out of place. Well, that was just my story. And I just fictionalized it kind of. And then noggin, even a further exploration of different parts of my brain or whatever. But what I found really early on is that telling stories about anything through the perspective of teenagers actually opens up your book to a much bigger audience and a wider audience. And it's not just that, but it opens it up to bigger, more meaningful, at least I think, ideas, because there's some accepted and allowed vulnerability in youth that allows anyone who reads about a teenager to give that person a little bit more room to grow and to figure out themselves and figure out the world. And I think when you write about adults, that maybe that is a little more limited and the world is a little more unforgiving to grown-ups. And I like the idea of writing about people who are just on the cusp of starting to figure out what the whole meaning of being on Earth is. And the idea that you can write about people who are about to be adults, and then what's going to happen, they're going to realize that, oh God, you can't figure out what life is about because none of us know what the hell is going on. So anyway, that's my really long answer.
And then in Where Things Come Back, what were you trying to say about adolescence by the way you characterize Gabriel?
You know, Gabriel, and the reason he's the youngest too, is I always like the idea of one character in a story being sort of pure and innocent. That in a story full of people who are all going through sort of, because it's fiction, sort of melodramatic, sort of hyperbolic situations in order for it to be entertaining, all that. I like the idea of one character grounding everyone in some sort of like out of age wisdom. And that's what my goal was for Gabriel. Gabriel is named Gabriel because all of the book's religious undertones and overtones, I guess, all of those things needed to be brought in as subtly as possible in the Cullen Winter thread, in that story. And so having a brother named Gabriel who acted a little innocent, a little wise beyond his years, but also almost angelic, it seemed, to the other people who had lost him afterward. That was just on purpose, and that's why I wrote that character. He needed to be something to be lost in the world. So when all of a sudden the reader realizes that Gabriel is missing, they not only need to be able to feel that pain from Cullen and Lucas's and Cullen's family's perspective, but really early on in the book, they need to be able to feel some kind of other loss. And what I was trying to do is give them enough of Gabriel in the first few chapters of the book to actually make you feel a loss that is a little greater than just, oh, I'm going to miss this character if he doesn't come back. But instead, oh, I'm going to miss what that character represents if he doesn't come back, which was kind of this more hopeful, innocent perspective in an otherwise sort of cynical storyline. Yeah.
Awesome, cool.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I use Chris majoring in psychology and in English, and I have two questions for you. First one is, did you always plan to have the lives of Cullen and David meet, or did you write each separately and it came together later, and why did you include different timelines?
That's a really good question. The answer is no. I wanted to write the book from just Cullen Witter's perspective. I started writing it. I had the idea for about a year, but I started teaching public school in that time, so I kind of had to set the book aside and just kind of work on it here and there. And the summer after my first year teaching, I sat down and just wrote the whole thing, the whole first draft of Where Things Come Back. And I got to about 11 or 12 chapters, about halfway through the book, with just Cullen Witter's narrative. And I hadn't come up with the idea for Bitten Sage or Cabin Circe or the Book of Enoch, none of that. And so I was talking to a friend, and it was just something was getting on my nerve. It was bothering me that I had had Gabriel go missing, but I had nothing to ever explain it. And the original intent was write a story about the brother of a myth. Just about the character inspiration of the brother and the family left behind. But that, it just wasn't. After I wrote so much of it and became attached to these characters and talked more about Gabriel and like fell in love with him too, it kind of just became really difficult for me not to write a book that explains to the reader and just selfishly to myself what happened to them. And so then I was talking to a friend about it, and I said something about, I'm thinking about bringing a cult into this story. For whatever reason, I had seen something about a cult, and I thought this could be kind of interesting, and I'm playing with religion so that I could go there. And she suggested that I do something a little different and look into the Book of Enoch, which she'd read about in an article somewhere. So I did, and I read the whole Book of Enoch about twice, and I realized that there were all these weird, glaring similarities between the things that I had sort of written with this like religious undertone and subject and this actual religious text. And things started reminding me of things I had already written, and it had to be in the book. It had to be part of the book. And so my first goal was, how the hell do I get someone a Book of Enoch? Like, why would someone in this story be reading the Book of Enoch, which is found in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible? And so I just figured out, I'll just start with the character in Ethiopia and see what happens, and that's what I did. It was weird. I started with that scene, and it was the scene where Benton Sage is trying to buy bread, and where he's about to be sent to Ethiopia by his church. And then I just threw him right in there and kind of worked it out, and didn't realize until a little ways into Benton's story that it wasn't his story, that Benton was just a way to get to Cabot Circe's story. And so it all happened very, I would say organically, but I'm going to just say chaotically instead, because I didn't really intend on it to go in any one way. I just wanted a way to kind of bring some kind of closure to the original storyline, which was Cullen Witter's narrative through and through. So then later, when I had it published, blah, 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 we interspersed the chapters, because they started at chapter 11 or 12 in the first draft, and then just went through the end of the book, alternating with Cullen's narrative. But then when we edited it, my editor said, just for understanding and for younger readers and things, we should have the story be every other chapter. And so that was most of the work that I did at the revision stage. It was just rearranging the whole book to make sense. So, in the timeline, I wanted a twist. I always liked them. I always thought, if I could write something that has kind of a twist in it, where there's a moment of realization for my reader, then I've accomplished something. I think it's really hard to make people laugh, cry, or feel surprised in writing. And so anytime I can accomplish one of those three things, I try to do it, because it's sort of just this challenge. And I grew up loving movies and stories that could take me in one direction and then kind of throw me for a loop and make me reevaluate just the idea of storytelling itself while I'm also getting a story. So that's why I did the timelines.
Okay. Also, in Where Things Come Back, were Alma or Ada inspired by past relationships in your own life in any way?
I would like to say they were, but I don't actually think they were that much. I didn't really date or anything in high school, so writing about like teenage relationships and stuff is sort of it's sort of funny for me because I was a total late bloomer. I don't think I went on a date until like college or after or something. I just never really, it didn't help that I was like a closet sexual for most of my life. So, you know, I would have been trying to date the wrong people. But I don't know, it's something that I write about out of necessity, but I like to write about it. And Ada and Alma are like, I would say that both of them are like combinations of different people that I probably knew. And more so in Noggin, the character of Kate is very heavily inspired by a really close friend of mine, and then a little taken from someone else. So actually in Helen Witter and Gabriel are like the only two people based on like actual real personalities, I guess, and then the other characters are just kind of figments of my imagination for the most part.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi,
Hello there.
I'm Nick. I'm an education major, second year.
Awesome.
So you kind of answered. Oh wait, no, I'm getting way ahead of myself.
Every question I
You
answer.
answered a lot. You got a lot. No.
I have really healthy lungs.
Just shut it all down now. The first one was where things come back. Your style is sort of like scene changes, like in a movie. So kind of the crux of this is, were you kind of thinking about it as a movie? Were you planning to write it as a movie in a sense, or thinking about it in sort of a cinematic way when you were putting it on paper?
Yeah, totally. I mean, just harkening back to what I was saying earlier, that really getting to be a storyteller or wanting to be a storyteller came to me from watching movies. I was a really bad reader. I still am a pretty bad reader, actually. Being a writer does not make you a better reader, I have learned over the past 4.5 years. I've really tried though, and I'm very slow. I've always been a slow reader. It takes me twice as long to read a book as it does the guy beside me. But so I think that frustration always pointed me toward doing something easier, which of course is watching movies, which is probably why we have a childhood literacy epidemic, but whatever. And you all can fix that thing. And but I see my books very cinematically. I see things in scenes, and when I come up with an idea for a book, my first thought isn't what's going to be the first line of that book. It's, okay, let me think about what could be a good scene in this book, and then I kind of start building little scenes in my head. I don't even write stuff down for a long time, and then when I go to write, I kind of just try to find ways to get from one scene to the other, and a lot of them, of course, don't come to me until I'm actually writing or I've started it, but I think thinking about it cinematically works for me the best. I think Where Things Come Back is definitely a little more cinematic than Noggin. I wanted Noggin to be more of a straightforward narrative, because it didn't need sort of like structural tricks to tell the story that I wanted to tell, but I think Where Things Come Back did in the end. And so, yeah, I mean, I love movies. I'm sick that Where Things Come Back hasn't been adapted into a movie. I had a deal with a production company years ago, and then they just sat on it for a year and did nothing, and it was a whole kind of bad agent situation, and I'm hoping something happens in the future. I have this dream of turning it, actually myself, into like a television series, like a really extended one. There are so many characters I could expand on, and I know I have ideas for all the characters and Where Things Come Back as far as like manipulating them for a longer story, but that'll happen when someone takes me seriously in Hollywood, which is never. And but Noggin is being made into a movie, which is really nice. So that's exciting, and that should happen. I think I have a pretty good feeling about that one, but the other one's just dead in the water.
So the other question was, you kind of answered already. I was going to ask about how you ran into the whole Ethiopian Orthodox Bible and the Book of Enoch. But sort of on top of that, or kind of as an extension, when you write about religion, that's a pretty controversial topic. So are you do you have trepidation about that? Are you kind of worried, maybe like bracing for hate mail and things like that? Or
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't until I became an author, and then I don't get very much hate mail or anything. I got my first piece of hate mail 2 weeks ago. It was beautiful. If you guys find my Tumblr page and just find my Twitter account or whatever, I posted the whole thing and my response. And I shouldn't have done that. But man, I was just, it did not anger me at all. I was so amused by it. And it was like this person said, you know, they were talking about where things come back, and they said, you know, if you're gonna write a book about religion, then you need to advertise it that way, because I don't believe in God, and I don't think this is what and I'm like, okay, well, I don't care what you believe in or don't believe in. Like, just read a book or don't read a book, and then shut the hell up. Like, what's wrong with you? If you don't like a book, then just do whatever you want with it. You don't have to write and personally attack me. So anyway, it's a very strange thing that people do. But no, I really don't care. Like, I just like to write about what I want to write about. And I grew up in the conservative South, and if I am going to be an honest writer, I still need to, and I'm going to in my next book, I need to explore what religion does to people. I need to explore what religion means in our lives. And if I'm going to write realistically at all about my experience being an American, it has to do with religion, and it has to do with what faith does to your society and what faith does to people on an individual level. And so you definitely invite scrutiny. The title Where Things Get Back originally was Good God Bird, and they made me change it. And that's probably because I have God in the title. And also it's just not a great title, apparently, but I thought it was great. And, but, you know, you do get that kind of thing. I've heard of people saying before, like, well, I wanted to like Where Things Come Back, but it was a little too much about religion or God or anything, and so, you know, all right. Then just don't read it. I don't know. I think that not all stories have to be told about the specific thing that they're about. So what I try to do is I try to write about something in such a way that you can replace it with other things. You know, if you aren't a religious person, then maybe you grew up in a household that was really strict or something. And so maybe that reader can identify with what it's like to be part of a conservative religion or something. And so, like, I at least try to keep in mind when I'm writing that the things I'm writing may actually accidentally alienate some of my readers, but hopefully I can write them in a manner that keeps them open for interpretation, because I think that's what fiction should do at its best. I think it should be a story about something specific that every single individual can take and sort of fill in the blanks with their own experiences and kind of help them to understand people in the world. So that's what the hope is.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi there.
Hello there.
My favorite musician's actually from Shreveport as well.
Who's that?
Brian Blade.
Brian
Drummer.
Blade.
Anyway,
Oh.
my name is Michael, and I'm a secondary English major. My question's about noggin. Like Kate and Kyle, I found myself getting really frustrated with Travis for his moments of immaturity. Really loved the reference to Tears for Fears, though that was awesome.
Thank you.
Did you intentionally write Travis as a frustrating protagonist?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, for sure. I may not have known he was as frustrating when I was writing it as I did after and read it, but and then more and more people read it and they were like, gosh, I was so mad at Travis for so much of the book. And I don't know, it sort of just naturally happened, but at the same time I think it was necessary because it was very necessary to remind the reader that he was 5 years in the past of the people he was dealing with. And so, like Kyle and Kate, they were, I think any person in their 20s dealing with a 16-year-old would be frustrated with them. You know what I mean? So there were things throughout the book that thematically and just tonally, I needed the reader to remember that this book is about time. This book is about being out of time with people and out of sync. And his behavior is one of the biggest ways of showing that and reminding the reader that Travis is not like them. Travis is stuck in the past, and he's stuck in a 16-year-old's brain and body, and they're not anymore. So No offense to 16-year-olds, but we all know that we were all a lot more irrational and frustrated when we were 16, I hope. And it's just that being able to show the reader that there's, even in that span of time, even if at 21 or 22 you're not very mature, you're more mature than you were at 16. And there is a difference between those two ages. And there's this thing about being a high schooler and in post-high school and in college that there is a clear difference in your attitude about the world and the way you treat people and things like that. And so I just wanted to keep that in mind, I guess. And plus, he's a teenage boy. Like, I was a little shit when I was a teenage boy, and so were every other teenage boy in the world. And so, and I also just needed it to be realistic. And he wouldn't be at all happy-go-lucky if this thing really happened to him in real life. If he were, then he wouldn't be this extraordinary person. And what I very specifically try not to do is write about extraordinary people. I just try to write about very typical people who are put in sort of extraordinary circumstances.
Great. Thank you very much.
Of course, thank you.
Hello.
Hi
My
there.
name is Abby, and I'm a history major with a minor in lit.
Great.
And my question for you is related to noggin. Have you heard of the real-life head transplant they are attempting to plan in 2017? And what do you think about that in relation to your book, Noggin?
I have heard of it. I think that guy's probably gonna die. I don't mean to even make light of it. I got asked this at another thing. I think it was like at a real, not that this isn't a real event, hi everyone, but at like an actual physical book signing or something. And it's so funny, you write about something like cryogenics or cryonics and a head transplant, and then all of a sudden you're asked about it all the time, and I get the biggest kick out of it. I know nothing about anything. I'm the biggest doofus in the world. I'm just kind of good at making stories up. And so for people to ask me about like technical scientific things makes me so happy. Because even The Guardian, the big paper in London, it did an interview with me, and then it quoted me, and it said, what did it say? Head transplants may be possible in my lifetime. Author John Corey Whaley. Like, it quoted me in a scientific. I was like, this is so embarrassing. I just make stuff up. I think that guy's probably gonna die. That's my answer. It sucks. It's sad, but I mean, I think I don't know a lot about medical technology. I don't know a lot about science, so it's possible. I also have a watch that I can talk to people on the phone on, so like anything can happen, like maybe in the span of 2 years they will they'll develop that technology, I'm not frozen.
No, you're still good.
Did I freeze? Okay. Okay, so yeah, it could happen. I'll cross my fingers for the guy. I wouldn't do it. But I also don't have the life that guy has, and I think every article I've seen is that he's opting to try for a better life. And so I think it can also just be seen as something really brave, and maybe him pushing it and making it a really public thing, and these doctors will push for more advancement in the technology, and we'll get more and more people interested in actually making something like that come to fruition. So all jokes aside, all reality aside, maybe it'll work and be good for the world and be great for that guy in Russia.
Thank you.
Of course.
Hi.
Hello there.
My name is Allie, and I'm also a secondary education major. I have a question about when you were a teacher. As also a writer of young adult fiction, did being around teens all day influence your writing? I noticed, especially in Noggin, the dialogue was so right on that you would hear teenagers saying. You notice that helps you the behaviors and the dialogue in the book?
I think I can't cite a specific instance of definitely taking something from an experience in teaching or anything, and I think about that a lot because I'm always thinking wow, you'd think at some point one of my characters would remind me of one of my students. But I think I wasn't a great teacher. You're all going to be much better teachers than I am if you're going to be teachers. And I wasn't great at it, and I was frustrated a lot of the times because of that, and so I was very, when I wrote at that time, and then a little while after, just because it was a frustrating experience for me in particular, I was put in a school that I used to go to in my hometown, and I had to teach all the younger siblings of my former classmates, and I had to sit in the teacher's lounge with all of my former teachers from middle and high school and listen to their dating life talk and stuff. It was horrifying. And so yeah, that was just a weird year, and so all my teaching was really weird. And so I can't ever really cite a specific instance, but I think I'm glad you noticed that in the dialogue, because I definitely think that consciously or subconsciously, being around teenagers I taught for 5 years, listening to the manner in which they speak to one another, I think that definitely helped. I think it definitely helped. I'm very glad you said that. I spend a very long time on dialogue. I spend more time on dialogue sometimes than I do just the prose parts of the story. So like exposition, there we go. Gosh, that word was just not coming to me. You guys are like, wow, he's not a writer, is he? Yeah, so I just always I always speak them out loud. I always say all my dialogue out loud, and I'm a crazy person. I just sit in my office and talk to myself in the voice of all these characters, but it works. And so yeah, it probably helped.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Of course. You guys are getting the longest answers today. I'm so sorry.
Hi, my name's Cody. My question's actually going to be a little bit quicker. If
All
you
right.
could put your head on anyone's body, fictional characters included, whose would it be?
It's a good one. Maybe like Victor Frankenstein. I think that would be fun. I would just be like Victor Frankenstein right before he woke up the monster, and I would just not do it. It was like save everyone a big problem, save the little girl that he chose. Like so maybe that's my answer. Victor Frankenstein. Of course. Also, this whole book was like an ode to Frankenstein. It's,
That's wonderful. Hi there. I am
Hello.
Whaley. I am an English writing concentration major thing. And my question, sorry. My question
what a
is,
strange degree.
it's a wonderful degree. But do you have any advice for writers who are interested in getting into the young adult genre?
Advice, this is always my worst part of it. Let me tell you, I'm really bad at advice. My advice is, I think what I had to learn, and I learned it kind of during the process of trying to get published with my first book, but then also writing a second and a third and I'm still learning it, is just patience with myself and with my own ability and with my sort of neurotic creative brain. And what I've learned in being around other authors and being around other artists and things is that, writing is an art. It is definitely an art. And it's something that I think, because there's a technical side to it, I think sometimes people on the outside have a hard time respecting it as an art the way that it is. And so you just have to kind of learn to reevaluate what writing means to you and why you do it and why you want to do it, and then sort of build the puzzle pieces from there. I had to learn to be really patient with myself and realize that not every sentence is going to be great, and not everyone is going to read everything I write. And in accepting those things, it kind of has liberated me into this feeling of realizing that my best work comes from the times when I really want to sit down and write, and the times that I really feel like I have something to say. And that's not everyone's story, of course. I know a lot of authors who work 9 to 5 every day, and they work just like a regular work day. It doesn't work for me. I can go months without writing a word. Sometimes that depresses me, but when I'm ready to write that word, it's usually pretty good, or it is for me anyway. I like it. And so I think just learning to be patient with your craft and with the creative side of it, because after all, if you throw away everything else, the getting an agent, the getting an editor, the getting published, the reviews, everything, the hardest part about being a writer is figuring out what kind of stories you want to tell, what kind of writer you want to be, with those things out of your mind. And I think I'm still getting there, but my biggest advice, of course, is to start that journey as soon as possible. Just because coming into it with a very confident, with a confident, mindset in your skill, because it is an art. It is an art, and a lot of people cannot do it. And maybe that sounds pretentious or egomaniacal or whatever, but it's if everyone could do it, everyone would have a look at. So it's like it's a specific thing, like being a musician or being a painter. And these people all, what I think the commonality is that people in all of these art forms, they all have to find that place that centers them or grounds them in what they actually want to do that has nothing to do with the outside world. And so I would just say focus on that, I guess. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is, first things first, we have like 4 more questions and we have like 3 minutes, so let's try to get them all.
Okay, I'm going to do this.
Okay, so my name is Kenneth Davis, I'm a literature major. My question is, certain writing books say that a plot is more important to a young adult novel than character development. Do you agree?
No, I wrote a whole character study book where things come back. Plot that had no, I think where things come back is a much more of a character study, and I wanted Noggin to be too, so I think you just have to be willing to let it go. That's not to say everyone doesn't want a book that's plot driven, but I think it can work. I prefer character stories.
Thank you.
That was fast, right?
That's awesome.
Proud of
How's it going?
myself.
My name is Juan Romo. I'm going just major with an English writing minor.
Awesome.
My question is, after you finish writing a book, how do you feel? Do you feel accomplished? Do you feel like you needed to add more to it?
I don't ever feel like I need to add more because I'm so tired of it. And I really want it to go away from me. So massive relief. There's usually a lot of junk food celebration, maybe a movie. I cried when I finished my first book because that was emotional. I had always wanted to write a book my whole life, and I finished it. It was like, oh, my first book means a lot to me. It's my most personal, I think, and so it. I needed closure for those characters. The sort of sadness about being done with it comes well after writing it. The writing process is, at least for me, pretty frustrating. It's very hit or miss. I can write for a week solid and then I can't write for a week. And so when that struggle's over with and when I'm done with revisions, by the time all that's happened, I just want to not look at those characters' names anymore. And so I kind of just need a break afterwards. So relief is a big part of it, but there's also this accomplished feeling because, even the books that I have published, that I've written and finished, there's this sense of okay, that's another book down, check. I can do this, I am valid, I have a reason to be in this career. So that helps.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name's Caitlin, and I actually love Soup John Stevens, so I have a music-based question for you.
Awesome.
How do you feel about what words in literature can convey versus what words in music can convey?
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I talk about this a lot because my boyfriend is a musician, a singer. And so we talk a lot about how similar what we do, our jobs are. He's a music teacher and God, that's so hard. I don't know. I think they can be, I think songwriting is so much harder than what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to move someone through a few lyrics as opposed to 300 pages is really, that's something. I always wanted to be a poet because of the respect I have for being able to tell a story or emote feeling through just sparse wordage or something like that. And so, I don't know, that's so hard. There's no one I can answer this in the time.
It seems like you're saying maybe you do the same thing, but you have more time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I have the luxury of a lot more space to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great, thank you.
Great question. Yeah.
Hi. I'm Desiree. I'm actually a writing major. I
Awesome.
want to publish books sometime.
Very
so
cool.
I was wondering, I know that the publishing process can be really difficult and strenuous, so I was wondering if you think that your novels lose anything through the process? Do you have to give it up?
I don't.
But I know some people do feel that way. I am really blessed to have a really great sister. She's a close friend. She's a very sweet close friend. She bought my book and she wrote me a letter basically saying, "This is why I want to be your editor." And I did when I read it, that she read everything back the way I wanted it to be read, and that she knew how to make that story more universal for my audience. And so my editor's job for the most part is just being the Corey whisperer and interpreting whatever weird things that I write in an actual story. And so I'm not super heavily edited, I guess, but she just is more of a navigator for me during the writing process, and the agent helps too. And so are there some times when a copy editor wants something to go with you really like? Yeah, but it's pretty minor. And for the most part, what I try to do is just keep really close relationships with everyone who works on my books. And so that's good advice too, that if you ever get into publishing, get to know everyone, get to know the editor, take them out for lunch a few times. Because getting to know that person on personal will just help them work better with you and interpret your thoughts in the writing, but also just help you to feel confident that your work is being done at hand. And so I'm very happy to say that I think I'm the right hand. So that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hi, last question. So I'm Bree and I'm an English teacher major. And my question is,
Desiree.
why is to finish straight your favorite word?
Oh gosh, I just think it's great. It's a word for being thrown out the window. That's the greatest thing. I was gonna write a book called The Dispensation of Advent. I did write a book called The Dispensation of Advent twice. It did not get published. It was not a great book. It was okay. So anyway, whatever that is, I was still working on the second book. And so I still don't have the heart to get out of it. I gotta get it. So I've got to keep it. I'm always finding people who they're also their favorite word.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, we want to say thank you. You're frozen. But
Here,
here, I'll show you the class really quickly. If you guys want to wave and say thank you.
Thank you so much. I do see everyone.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your fantastic responses.
Oh, well, thank you. I had a blast. Great question.
Great. Have a good afternoon.